Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your Rant Line, Rave Line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that Rave Line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio. Take two. Wednesday, September 4th, episode 556, coming to you here live on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to preview USC and Utah State's Locking Horns at the Coliseum, 8 p.m. Pacific time on BTN, the Big Ten Network. I'm your host, Mike Garcia, joined along with my co-host here in the Rancher Studio in Los Angeles, Alicia D'Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, we are back. For the second time in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We had some weird technical difficulties. I don't know exactly what happened. Dave in the chat says, did Jessie chew through the power cord?
You know what?
She might have.
She might have. She does like to chew things.
Yeah, Andrew says, stop putting peanut butter on the PC power button. I think
Yeah.
that's valid too.
Our bad.
Yeah. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you're like, what the hell are you talking about? We've been here the whole time. I know, we are. We are here. And if you didn't listen to us yesterday in our LSU Fallout episode, I have COVID, so that's why I sound weird. But we're fighting through. I am no longer questionable for Saturday, unlike Spencer Petras.
Yes.
Utah State's quarterback, who is questionable on Saturday, and we'll talk about that. And like we were trying to say the first time we recorded this, his name apparently is pronounced Petras.
The good news here, and that is completely the point of is taken away by us discussing it, is that we had to delay live while I pulled up the pronunciation guide because I remembered watching the extended highlights of the Utah State Robert Morris game and thinking, why is he calling him Petras? And then I made a mental note to go look that up before the show started. And then I only remembered it literally right as Michael said, Spencer Petras the first time through. So yeah, it's Petras. Yeah. Today we learned this is why you come to us, because we can tell you these very important things like how to pronounce Spencer Petras's name.
Yeah. Petras.
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 Oh, Petras. We're going to get this right. Petri dish.
Yes.
Petras.
Yeah. All right. A lot of stuff to get to on this.
Petras is going to be playing at the Collie.
Potentially, he's questionable.
Maybe.
Don't say Collie, please. It's the worst thing ever. My ears bleed. It's worse than saying a fight on instead of a V for victory.
I mean, true story.
Or actually, Trojan Nation and Collie are
Trojan
terrible. Of course, it's Trojan family, and you know, the Coliseum. But a lot of stuff to get to in this episode. Let's just jump into it. Before we do anything, Alicia, you got to sit down with legendary USC Heisman Trophy winner Reggie Bush.
Yes, I did. For Fansided, Reggie Bush is promoting a new Modelo fan initiative that they're doing, where they're going to take recruit fans to go to the national title game. And we were lucky enough to get talk to Reggie and get to discuss his thoughts on the Trojans this year, on Zachariah Branch specifically. He's a big fan of Zachariah Branch and wants to see him elevate his game to the level that Reggie Bush played at USC. And then also, little teaser about running the team out the tunnel.
Yeah. So go check out that interview over on YouTube. Just search Mandatory Radio if you are not there already, and watch it. Open up a new tab and then watch it later if you're watching us live on YouTube right now. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, I think we're going to put it up next week because the bye week. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. I think we'll put it up next week as a little bye week.
It's an audio only podcast.
Yeah.
But it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
That is on YouTube. If you want to watch it on YouTube already. All right, let's just get into it. SC and Utah State locking horns 8 p.m. Saturday night on Big Ten Network. The Trojans hosting the undefeated Utah State Aggies for the first time since 2016. Lacey, there's been a lot of comparisons that we've made to the 2016 Trojans because that team got absolutely boodle-donged against the Alabama Crimson Tide in an NFL stadium, in a dome, and then responded a week later by beating the heck out of Utah State. Here we are.
Yeah.
We thought that, that could be a similar type of deal. But SC beat LSU last week in a dome, in an NFL dome. And now they go into the Utah State game 1-0, just like Utah State does. That game back in 2016, the Trojans won 45-7. We'll see if SC can do that again. The Trojans are 28.5-point favorites. The 8 p.m. kickoff, one of the latest games, pretty much the latest game that you can get at the Coliseum is an 8 p.m. kickoff. Trojans will be also playing Rutgers in October at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. That one is 11 p.m. local time for Rutgers. This one only 9 p.m. local time in Logan for Utah State. But let's talk about the Aggies. It's Nate Drilling's first season. He's the interim head coach. He was previously the New Mexico State defensive coordinator the last couple of seasons. He got hired by Blake Anderson to be their defensive coordinator at Utah State. And then Blake Anderson subsequently got fired in July after a sexual misconduct investigation. No bueno. And Drilling is the youngest head coach in FBS. He formerly played at Pittsburgh State, the Fighting Gorillas, which is probably the best name in all of collegiate athletics.
Why aren't there more gorilla mascots? Like, I feel like gorilla should be up there with tigers and lions, and like it's just
I'd start with
super intimidating.
Potentially racism, and then
that's a good reason. Okay.
Sure, but
all right.
If you use it in the right context, great name, obviously.
Yeah.
I always wonder, why is sharks not used more?
That's a good one. Yeah, there should be
sharks.
More sharks.
Is a great, like, not even high schools use sharks.
Yeah,
like very few. I think it was at it's not Santiago High School. It's somebody in Orange County or something uses sharks. Somebody in the chat's going to tell us. But yeah,
I personally think there should be some orcas out there.
I'm sure there are. Like the Oroville Orcas taking the field. Like that could work. Get some alliteration there. All right, let's talk about Nate Drilling's Utah State Aggies. They beat Robert Morris. Robert Morris went into a game having to face all 11 of the Utah State Aggies on the field at once. Held firm. Robert Morris led 14-10 at the half. Then the Aggies scored 26 unanswered points in the second half with backup quarterback, drum roll please, Bryson Barnes. Remember that guy?
What a callback.
Yeah. A pig farmer.
Thought we were done with him.
Yeah, famed.
Utah moving to the Big 12. USC moving to the Big 10. Never have to see Bryson Barnes again.
Nope. He came in relief of Spencer Petras, who left with an ankle injury. Utah State had 646 total yards of offense, their most in 5 years since they dropped a 700 burger on Stony Brook back in 2019, also an FCS school. Robert Morris, not exactly a high-quality FCS opponent, if you're going to split hairs there, but they had one of the highest the highlights of the year, if not the best interception I've ever seen in my life. Did you see this?
Yes, I saw it.
Barnes dropped back right before the half, threw a deep ball, and the dude, like, he basically did the Kyron Hudson thing, but even more spectacular.
Spin. Yeah, it was the Kyron Hudson thing with like a pirouette.
Yeah, he looked like the Pacific Life logo. You know, the humpback whale jumping out of the thing.
Out and spinning. Yes, he looked like that. It was absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, it looked like something out of a movie.
The only thing that made Kyron Hudson's interception more impressive from a difficulty standpoint was that Kyron Hudson took a hit and still held on to his. But from a visual perspective, the Robert Morris interception.
Robert Carter. Yeah.
Well, Robert Carter against Robert Morris.
If your name is Robert Carter, you have to go to a school that starts with Robert, right?
This is fair. Yeah. He didn't go to the school. He did go to Robert.
Yeah.
He is from Robert Morris. Yes, against Utah State. Yes.
Yeah, it's Bobby U, baby.
Yeah. From a pure, like, Kyron Hudson's is higher difficulty from a real football perspective. Robert Carter's is a football movie director's wet dream.
Yes. It's a showman move.
Yes.
Yeah. Like the audacity of trying to pull that off. Kyron Hudson throws up his hand up there because out of desperation kind of thing, and it makes an incredible catch. Robert Carter's like, look at this. Look what I'm about to do.
Watch this.
Yeah.
What is it? Watch this. Watch this.
Yeah, and then he catches the ball from Bryson Barnes. Let's talk about the quarterback situation for Utah State. Spencer Petras, as far as we can tell, is still questionable. Obviously, this can change going into the game. He is the Iowa transfer. He was 10 of 15 for 145 yards. Did throw 2 picks against Bob Morris last week. One of them, not his fault. The wide receiver just fell down on a little curl route.
And the other one was one of those ones where the DB is sort of right on top of a receiver who's running like a slant, maybe a deep slant. I can't remember how deep down the field they were.
And you want the receiver to catch the ball anyways.
Receiver to catch the ball anyways. And the fact that the DB catches it instead is, I mean, obviously the quarterback puts it in a dangerous spot, but in that situation, I always say, why didn't the receiver play DB there?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But Spencer Petras not going to get the benefit of the doubt overall because he was at Iowa for a long time, owns a lot of school records at Iowa. But I got to say, I don't know that that's speaking a lot highly of his career thus far. 37 games played at Iowa over 5 seasons, 2.5 of those seasons spent as a starter, 24 touchdowns, 19 interceptions, a quarterback rating of a $114.7. That is not great. But before the season, Drilling said he's the number 1 quarterback. I truly believe he's one of the best throwing quarterbacks in the country. And I think in a couple of weeks, you guys will see that and will be saying that as well. We will see. We will see if he's able to get out there on Saturday. If it's not Petras, it'll be Bryson Barnes, who is 11 of 21, $198, 2 touchdowns. He had that crazy interception we talked about earlier. That was a deep ball right before the half. I don't know that that's truly a crime on his behalf. Sure, he probably underthrew it. Mm-hmm. But he ran for 88 yards, including a 63-yard touchdown run. And, of course, remember him on the ground last year, sealing the deal with a 26-yard scramble to set up a game-winning 38-yard field goal from Cole Becker for the Utah Utes to beat the Trojans and essentially eliminate the Trojans from playoff contention, giving the Trojans their second loss of the season, back-to-back losses after losing to Notre Dame the week before. Whoever the quarterback is, they'll be looking to throw to Jalen Royals, 2023 first team All-Mountain West. Last year, he caught a bunch of passes, 15 receiving touchdowns, led the conference after being a JUCO transfer from Georgia. There's his first season in D1 and caught 15 touchdown passes. Pretty damn good. In week 1, he got 30.5% of all pass attempts went his way. 11 targets, more than double anybody else on the team. 5 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown last week against Robert Morris. Their run game, though, sort of interesting. Alicia, you want to tell us about the run game and the running back situation?
Yeah, so they have they sort of had a two-headed operation, and then Robert Briggs, who had 88 yards in that game against Robert Morris, ended up getting a season-ending leg injury and definitely not going to play against USC, not going to play the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So they turned to Herschel Turner, who is
Great name.
It's a good name for a running back for sure.
It's like a Madden generated name for a running back.
Yes, for sure.
Like Herschel Walker and Michael Turner put together.
Yes, and Herschel Turner came in and looked pretty good. He's got some speed to burn if he can get out in open space. So
Yep.
I don't think it's Robert Briggs is quite good as well, but I don't think it's a huge it's not a huge step down for them from what I saw from what Herschel Turner can do. And then obviously I think the main man now in that two-man backfield is going to be Rezel Faison, who is super slippery between the tackles. He's one of those. He's the kind of running back that I really like. Who maybe not the biggest dude, but he seems to have good vision. Seems to find a crease and then get going once he gets going.
Yeah.
He had 12 carries, 78 yards, 6.5 yards per carry against Robert Morris. So for me, it looks like the Utah State offense probably intended to be quite balanced this year with Spencer Petras and this running attack. But if Petras is out, I think we're going to see a Utah State that relies far more heavily on their running game.
Yeah.
Not just from a running back perspective where they get the ball out to Faison and Turner, but from Bryson Barnes being able to take off and run. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some designed runs for him as well. And then I also want to call attention to, you mentioned Jalen Royals, who is their sort of big-bodied receiver, 6'3", guy who uses his body, his physicality to make catches. The breakout star and apparently unexpected star of that game against Robert Morris was Kyrese White. He is more of a slot guy. Had 3 catches, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns against Robert Morris. All of those catches were on, screens, yak yard kind of things where they get the ball to him and then he makes a man miss and gets going very quick. So they have those kinds of weapons in their passing attack, but I think you can expect Utah State to try to do more. Like they're not going to try to, at least my perception, unless they were really, really holding back against Robert Moore, they're not going to try and chuck the ball down the field. They're not going to try and sling it around particularly. It's a lot of getting their athletes out in space and letting them work with what they can work in. So this will be an interesting test for USC's defense, which we saw be extremely disciplined, keep everything underneath. I think it probably plays into USC's defensive mindset this season, insofar as we can, make that assumption after one game.
Yeah.
But it is going to come down heavily to, again, tackling in open space, and you got to feel a lot better about that after watching USC tackle LSU's athletes in open space.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the defense plays in this game because, certainly SC has a major talent advantage here. But if it's Bryson Barnes or if it's Spencer Petras, these are not guys who don't have experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bryson Barnes is not going to be scared of the Coliseum. Spencer Petras has played in a bunch of Big Ten stadiums. He started for 2.5 seasons. Like there's a lot of experience there. The offensive line is interesting too.
Yeah, I'll let you get to the offensive line because this is sort of related, but we had talked in the CarCast and in the Fallout episode about how it felt like USC's defensive line was very disciplined, maintaining the pocket, not really opening up space for Garrett Nussmeier to run if he had wanted to. Not that Garrett Nussmeier is looking to run. Bryson Barnes will be looking to run. So it'll be again interesting to see if USC's discipline up front holds up in this game, because if Utah State gives USC an unexpected bit of trouble, it's going to be because of that kind of improvisation.
Here's a dumb question. Would you rather SC face Bryson Barnes because he's someone who can I consider him more of a scrambler than a runner. Who's going to, be willing to take the scramble when he needs to. Is it better to face someone with that threat before Michigan, before you go into a Michigan team that's going to at least have a package
honestly
for Orgy?
Honestly, I do, at the risk of like jinxing anything, I think you're right. I think you want to face, from a USC perspective, let's be honest, Utah State is not a team that USC is going to expect to give them a lot of trouble. Then again, Oregon didn't expect Idaho to give them trouble. So like it's not about overlooking the opponent, but this game really should be about USC working out some of the kinks and sort of figuring, working on some things. And one of the things that I do want to see from this defense is, what do they do? What does this defense look like against a scrambling quarterback? Because it's not just Alex Orji against Michigan when USC gets there, but it's Riley Leonard at the end of the season, who is one of the, a quite dangerous scrambler in that sense. So, yes, USC will be facing scrambling quarterbacks. Dylan Raiola is going to be another guy who can take off and run if he needs to. So it's not, I don't want to, again, disrespect Utah State, but like this could almost be like a scout team game in the sense of like, so what do you do to get some tape for USC to teach some of the defenders too?
Right.
Here's how we're going to manage a pocket. Here's how we're going to manage a quarterback who wants to take off and run. I think it will be more fascinating to see what USC does against Bryson Barnes than against Spencer Petras, who is much closer to a like poor man's Garrett Nussmeier than what you get with
in terms
Bryson
of
Barnes.
Pocket presence.
He wants to stand in the pocket and throw it.
Right.
And that's its own test if you have an accurate guy. We saw the soft coverage that USC was playing. So yeah, it could be something that you could learn some things, but I think you learn more facing a Bryson Barnes than you do Spencer Petras at this point.
Yeah, I want to talk about their offensive line. It's a veteran-laden group. 4 starters are back from last season. They were very good against Robert Morris. Again, it was Robert Morris, which is a lower-tier FCS team, but they allowed just 4 pressures all game, 0 sacks. And we know that SC had no sacks against LSU. Utah State also ran for 303 yards against Robert Morris for an average clip of 9.8 yards, including 7 chunk runs. So I think that is sort of interesting to see how can they, compare to LSU. Is maybe not, it's obviously a huge drop off because LSU is probably the best offensive line that SC is going to face all season, potentially one of the best offensive lines in the country. But at least it's another veteran group that knows how to play together. The difference being, A, it's Utah State. B, they ranked 120th in sacks allowed last year, averaging 3.4 per game. So
it's good you bring that up.
Like that's a good test for SC to see, like, okay, if SC doesn't have the ability to sack the quarterback here, and let's say it is Petras who's starting, if SC can't get against Petras, then yeah, maybe there is a problem with SC's lack of a pass rush. But this could also be, just what the doctor ordered for SC to get that pass rush going.
Yeah, that's the thing is it's the age-old question. This was the conversation around Virginia Tech this past weekend. Everyone thought that Virginia Tech could be a dark horse in the ACC, and largely in part because they returned everybody. But then there was the conversation after they lost to Vandy. It was like, well, this isn't a video game. Returning everybody doesn't mean everybody gains XP points that you can invest in making your players better. They don't always get better.
They didn't have motivator enabled?
They didn't have motivator enabled, exactly. Or they need to put more points in that. So, the offensive line, certainly veteran, but when that same group was as ineffective as they were last year, it will be interesting to see. Now, with offensive lines, it's slightly different because I do believe that the more time that a line has to play together, the better they are likely to get, just because of familiarity and chemistry and all that is so important with an offensive line.
Right.
But at the same time, like if it was a bad offensive line last year, and it's the same guys, like their chemistry might not be the issue.
Yeah. Let's talk about the defense for Utah State. Last year, not great. They were 118th in defensive FEI. Preseason FEI ranks had them on 113th this year. But it's a new defense. It's a 4-2-5 with Nate Dreeling. And not only is it a new defense in terms of scheme and coaching staff, but he brought in a ton of dudes from New Mexico State. Just going through their 2 deep, of all the guys who are transfers that are high ranking in their two deep from New Mexico State, Gabriel Ingriez, the defensive tackle, Gabe Peterson, defensive end, Torin Union, the defensive back at nickel, Jordan Vincent at safety. Those are all at least co-starters, if not starters. Would have been one more, unfortunately. Andre Selden, unfortunately passed away in July in a drowning incident, which is absolutely god awful.
Yeah.
Our thoughts go out to everyone involved there, the Utah State family, and it's
The New Mexico State family.
yeah,
and his
all of
family.
that.
Yeah.
It's horrible. But he was another guy from New Mexico State because Drilling brought in a bunch of dudes from New Mexico State. And the interesting thing is, like, there's so many guys who are new. 29 of the 51 incoming players that Utah State brought onto this roster this season are on defense. And looking at the two deep, there's a chance that depending on who actually gets a start with the oars on the depth chart, they could have as few as 3 returning starters on defense. Does that sound familiar to you? It's basically what SC is doing, right? Like,
yes, with a very important difference.
Sure, they don't have Danton Lynn. Yeah.
Well, Danton Lynn came to USC from an offense that allowed 18 points per game.
Yes.
And
Dreeling last year at New Mexico State
allowed 35.1 points per game. So,
yeah, they were 106th in yards per play against. Yeah, so that's the difference there, is that I think I would feel a little bit better about the Utah State defense from a Utah State perspective if Dreely had more success at New Mexico State. It's hard because New Mexico State might be the least talented team in the country, right? Like, it's a hard place to recruit.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's hard for those numbers to look pretty anyways. Utah State, more talent. And he does bring a lot of those guys from New Mexico State, but a bunch of other transfers. Clyde Washington at linebacker from Purdue. One of the guys I think is going to be interesting to watch. Co-starter at will linebacker, John Ross Mang, who came in from D2 Lenore Rhine, a college out of North Carolina. Led the team in tackles last week.
Yeah.
That's a way to get it under your belt pretty quickly. So
yeah, dude was flying around. So, a lot of times when the guys who are coming up from a lower level come up, you never know how are they going to adjust, how are they going to go against a more difficult level. Granted, they were playing an FCS team, so not as big of a jump up to FBS level, let alone Power 4 level, let alone USC level. But yeah, dude was flying around.
Yeah. So that's Utah State. We'll see how the Aggies perform on Saturday. The Trojans are 28.5-point favorites. Let's get into over under, everybody's favorite segment, I think. Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Wrong button. Well, it's not the wrong button. It's just here we go.
Wrong input.
So you're going over. I'm doing bold. Give me that over.
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take.
I'm going to do an under here.
All right. Let's start. Over under. Alicia, you're over under. Just one. What do you got?
All right. I'm going 189.5 USC rushing yards. I was tempted to put this at 199.5 because I really love did you stop somebody from getting 100 yards or did you gain 200 yards? Like, I just love those kinds of numbers. So I'm going 189 just because I'm trying to not do that as much this year so that I give myself a better chance of winning over under this year. USC had 77 yards rushing against LSU, only averaged 3.7 yards per carry. Obviously USC wants to run the ball more than they did against LSU, and you can chalk that up to opposition for sure. But you can only do that if you then turn around and go up against an opposition like Utah State that is not LSU, and show that you can run the ball. So for comparison, last year USC had 160 rushing yards against San Jose State and 215 against Nevada. in 2022. USC had 208 against Rice. These are the similar sort of schools that USC has played under Lincoln Riley. So, you know, we have examples of USC not quite getting up to 190 or 200, but we also have examples of USC getting up to 200. Utah State allowed 137 rushing yards to Robert Morris. They averaged 4 yards per carry. And I want to point out, just having watched the extended highlights from that game, it's wild how different a defensive line looks like when they're not USC's or LSU's. Sort of highlights the size that those big Power 4 teams are coming with. Because Utah State's defensive line starters, Blaine Spires, 6'3", 230 pounds, defensive end. Gabriel Iniquez, 6'1", 280, defensive tackle. Miguel Jackson, 6 foot, 290, defensive tackle. Inoka Migao, 6'4", 260. These are much smaller bodies than USC played against LSU.
There's not a Harold Perkins here either.
No.
Yeah.
So here's my thought on this over under, and then I'll let you pick. I set the line at 189.5, not because I don't think USC is capable of getting 200, but because I think that this could come down, the rushing totals that USC sees could come down purely to like whether or not USC wants to gain 200 yards rushing in this game.
Yeah, I'm taking the over. I think that after SC was able to run the ball at times last week, particularly the first and the last drive of each half, SC ran the ball pretty well. I think when LSU was not necessarily expecting it. But I think that you look at the numbers that SC had last week were not sufficient for what you would have expected SC to be able to do on the ground and what you would have wanted. I think the running game is going to be a point of emphasis in this game against Utah State. Plus, this is one of those opportunities to get everybody involved. All the pass catchers were involved last week, but not all the running backs. We didn't see Peterson. We didn't see any of the other newcomers involved.
Brian Jackson.
Woody Marks had 16 carries, and Quentin Joyner had 4? That's a big drop off. I expect there to be more distribution in this game, in the run, and more opportunity to sort of see what the run game can do. So give me the over on 189.5 rushing yards. By the way, if you're joining us live on YouTube, we'll throw the link in the chat, and you can make your picks over on our little Google form and play along. If you're listening to us via podcast, check the show notes. The link's in there as well. Let's go to the next one. My first over under 2.5 sacks for the Trojans. We talked about it earlier. Utah State returns 4 guys as starters on that offensive line. A lot of returning talent there and experience, but they were very bad in allowing sacks last year. 3.4 per game. SC did not have a sack last week. Utah State did not allow a sack to Bob Morris last week. Bryson Barnes was only sacked once by the Trojans last year when Utah came to the Coliseum. 2.5 sacks. What do you got?
Taking the over big. And I feel this strongly about that because having rewatched the game, I think that USC got more pressure than I initially realized.
Sure. I
think that Anthony Lucas got much closer to picking up a couple sacks than I realized. I also think that I liked the way that USC's line played discipline and kept the quarterback corralled. And I think that my hope is that we will see Bryson Barnes' legs and mobility be less of a factor because of disciplined defensive line play, where they don't let those rushing lanes open up for him.
Yeah.
and that you could end up in a position where you get a few more like coverage sack kind of situations
Right.
because you don't let him get out of the pocket and run. Um, that's my hope. But
It also
this
helps
is-
that SC is tackling better, right?
oh yeah, tackling better, not missing those opportunities for sure. So I think that USC, I think we will see USC if Anthony Lucas plays with the same intensity that he played against LSU, and I see no reason why he wouldn't. I think he's due for a couple sacks, just him alone.
Yeah.
And I liked what I saw from the rest of the ends. I think those will be opportunities, and I think USC's interior defensive linemen. And again, I don't want to draw so many conclusions from one game, but I really liked their intelligence in the sense of they seem to have a good feel for where to be. And I
Sure.
wouldn't be surprised if maybe they have a quarterback run into them for a sack as well, just being alive to when the quarterback is going to take off and run.
Yeah.
I think this will be a multi-sack game.
If the line was 3.5, would you take the over?
I would still take the over.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was tempted to put it at 3.5.
Yeah.
Put it at 2.5, sort of as a penalty for SC not having a sack against LSU, but fair enough. Let's go to your next over-under. What do you got?
I'm going with tight end catches, 5.5 tight end catches for USC. Lake McCree had 5 catches against LSU. Kate Eldridge came through with 1, so it was 6 against LSU. It was by far, I think, the most involved that we've seen the tight end in a consistent sense from USC in quite a while. We saw some two tight end sets out there. That was nice to see. Lake McCree is very clearly a bit of a safety blanket for Miller Moss. Last year, McCree himself had 3 games where he had 4 catches, but 5 was the most that he's had over the last 2 years. So
yeah,
5.5 total tight end catches. So that's not just Lake McCree. That's Kate Eldridge. That's if we see Walker Lyons or any of the freshmen that come in. I'm going to guess Carson Tabarachi is still going to be out injured because I haven't heard anything otherwise. But will USC continue to target the tight end against a defense that I suspect will be a bit more open to exploit in terms of being able to hit wide receivers and all of that?
I think it's going to be interesting to see, was Lake McCree's performance against LSU just in line with, because there's only one more catch than he had last year in his best games. He had 4 catches a couple times. Was it just a repeat of those performances?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it really a direction where the offense is going to go, where they're going to emphasize the tight end a little bit more? We've seen, we saw Caleb Williams throw that little RPO to Lake McCree right up the seam, little quick pass. We saw Miller Moss do it a couple times in this game, so that's not exactly new. And because of that, I'm taking the under. I'm taking the under because I don't know that it is proven that we're going to see Lake McCree catch 5 passes a game every week. I think he can have his impact, and he could be a fantastic, valuable player on this offense. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to get 5 catches every week.
I want to emphasize for the listeners at home who are putting in their over-under picks, this is tight end catches, not Lake McCree catches.
Yes.
Lake McCree could have 2 catches, and if Kate Eldridge comes through with
totally valid.
4,
yeah,
that's still hitting the over, for the record.
Yeah. Lake McCree could have 3. The other guys each have 1, and then you're still maybe under.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. Let's get to the next one. Over under 0.5 one-handed catches by the Trojans. This goes for anybody. Kyron Hudson, Deuce Robinson. If Kamari Ramsey intercepts the ball with one hand, that counts. Any one-handed catch. I will even allow a one-handed lateral catch. So if there's some little razzle-dazzle double pass where it gets back to Miller Moss and he catches it with one hand before he throws it again, I will allow it. One-handed catches. Will there be a one-handed catch in this game?
You are baiting me and the listeners, and I am not taking that bait. I'm taking the under. You could have done one-handed catches in this game overall, because we know that one-handed catch that
Utah
Robert
State
Carter
allowed.
had.
Yeah.
That you never know what the other side of things is going to do.
Sure.
I am just taking the under on pure I'm never going to bet that this is going to happen, but
I have a theory.
I do guarantee you we are going to see highlights of Kyron Hudson and Robert Carter's one-handed grabs in this game.
Sure, plenty. Yeah. I have a theory. I think it's possible that one-handed catches are more popular than we think because of the number of times there will be a one-handed catch that's not necessarily a highlight reel play.
Yeah.
Like the times that a guy catches one who his hand is just right there in the breadbasket and he just catches it like that, like he's not reaching out or whatever. That could still be one-handed maybe.
I was watching Kyron Hudson's the targeting catch.
Yeah.
Was that one-handed? Because it low-key looked like it.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the two that he had, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I would have counted that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's get to the next over-under. What do you got?
All right. I am going with 4.5 explosive rushing plays for Utah State. This is runs of 10 or more yards. Utah State had 7 rushes of 10-plus yards against Robert Morris. It accounted for 204 of their 305 rushing yards in that game. LSU had 4 rushing plays of 10-plus yards, accounting for 71 of their 117 rushing yards against USC this past week. Now, obviously, last year's defense is not indicative of what this year's defense is, but last year, San Jose State had 7 rushes of 10-plus yards against USC, and specifically with Bryson Barnes against Utah last year. The Utes had 9 with Bryson Barnes accounting for 4 of those gains of 10-plus yards. So 4.5 might be a little bit high here, but we do have to factor in that I don't think this game is going to be close. The closer you get to garbage time with backups and all of that, the more likely you are to maybe have someone like Bryson Barnes be able to take off a few times, or somebody like Rizal Faison break off a run or two. You only have to lose your concentration once or twice in a game to let a few of those happen. So
Right.
Where are you going?
I'm tempted to take the over for that reason. But I'm going to take the under because I think SC will be able to just tackle well. We saw that last week, and I'm sort of going to ride that out. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 1 or 2 towards the end of the game. The other thing is it's 4.5. I think there could be 4.
Yeah.
I think it's really tough. If it was 5.5, I would have felt definitely way more comfortable with the under here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to take the under just barely. I will say that if you would have put this at 15 plus, I would have slammed the over immediately. But I had to think about this one and take the under.
Yeah, I put it at 10 plus because I've decided that when I set over under statistics, I need to make it easier on us. And
stat broadcast.
If they're in stat broadcast,
refers to
they're,
them as 10
they're
plus.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Passing big plays are 15 plus, and run plays are 10.
Yeah, it makes it easy that way. All right, my last over under is over under 2.5. Jaden Mayava drives that start with Jaden Mayava at quarterback. 2.5. The reason I mention this is because Miller Moss had 2 against San Jose State last year. Would have had 3 if not for a Zachariah Branch kickoff return for a touchdown. And then Miller Moss also had 3 against Nevada. But SC had this guy named Caleb Williams last year. And the offense, I think, was at a top gear. SC's offense is not at a top gear yet that we've seen because we have minimal sample size with what this offense can be this year, right? So 2.5 is where I'm going.
I'm taking the under on this solely because of what we talked about last week, where the clock is moving faster in these games.
Yep.
And we're seeing overall across college football fewer plays. And I think that we might end up in a situation where we're just seeing fewer drives in general. So if USC takes Miller Moss out after by the end of the third quarter, if I assume that Lincoln Riley tends to keep his quarterbacks in outside of extreme circumstances for 3 quarters, then the fourth quarter, Jaden Mayava might not get 2 drives, let alone 3. So it would really depend. I honestly think that Jaden Mayava getting 3 drives in this game depends on him coming in before the end of the third quarter.
Yeah.
And I suspect that Lincoln Riley will want Miller Moss to get as many drives as he can for his own sort of development. So going under, not because I don't think USC isn't going to be well ahead and in a position to put a backup in, but I do think my memory of Lincoln Riley, even though USC's defense didn't allow him to get into garbage time very often, of thinking to myself, like, why haven't they taken Caleb out yet?
Caleb played into the fourth quarter in one of those games last year.
So I'm just going on that.
All right. That is over under for this week. Let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
You've got mail.
All right, let's start with
Are we not going to make our picks?
Oh, we do have to make our picks.
We do have to make our picks.
Sorry. Alicia, the Vegas spread, SC by 28.5. Bill Connolly's SP Plus projection has SC winning 48-23 with a 94% USC win probability. What's your prediction?
I like Bill Connolly's 48. I don't like his 23. So I'm going 48-17.
Okay.
I think that I always give an extra touchdown in a game to the opposition in a game that I think will be a blowout.
Yep.
So for me, I think USC's frontline defense doesn't give up more than 10 points, but I always account for just garbage time. The likelihood is in garbage time they will score a touchdown.
Yep.
So yeah, 48-17. What a time to pitch a shutout if Danton Lynn wanted to.
I'm mad at you because I wrote in my score prediction first, and I was thinking about this yesterday before we started the rundown. I thought 48-17 was the first thing that jumped off my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't because I always like to take off a touchdown and turn it into a field goal.
Okay.
So that makes 13 points for Utah State instead of 17.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, maybe there'll be some more weirdness, either a missed PAT or SC settles for a couple of field goals or something, a few more field goals than you would expect, or maybe there's a safety, something weird. 47-13. That's my prediction. 47-13. Either way, I think we both have SC covering the spread, which is 28.5. All right, let's get into the mailbag for real this time.
You've got mail.
Okay, let's start with a voicemail we got from our good pal, Sean in beautiful Austin, Texas.
Hey, Rena Choi. Sean here from beautiful Austin, Texas. Even as a neutral fan, if I was, which I'm not, that would have been an amazing game. But to be on the winning end of that game, that feeling is magic. Yeah, the play calling was great. There were a couple of shaky moments, like that double reverse where we didn't look at where we were throwing it. It was tough, but man, hard to be upset with that performance. It was everything you wanted. There was there was great passing. There was tactical mistakes by the enemy. It was everything. I loved it. I'm so glad football season's back. Thank you guys for all you do. I really miss the podcast. I'll try to call in more this year. But all right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Fight on.
Thanks for the call, Sean, and as always, Lisa, your thoughts on his view of the game?
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think it was just, I'm still buzzing from it. It's Wednesday and I'm still buzzing from it. It's just lovely.
Yeah, it helps that it's a short week too. Like Britton Irvine called in the Rant Line and says the great thing about playing on a Sunday is that it's one day closer to Saturday. And yes, absolutely, that is the case.
And it's also just, I love being in that fan mode where I'm really excited just to watch them play again. And last year that was beaten out of me. Like I dreaded Saturdays. So
when we were at our meetup a few weeks ago, our preseason tailgate meetup thing, I was talking to Tim in LA, and Tim in LA was asking about, what was it like doing the podcast through the Clay Helton era? And I'm like, gotta be honest, it sucked. Like, we were so very close to like giving it up and not doing it anymore because it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun getting on here and having to say the same thing every week because the play was so repetitive, but also dealing with like the toxicity of all of the commentary around the team, right? Like, if you said anything positive about anything, people would be upset that you were, praising any sort of thing because Clay Helton is here and it should be gloom and doom no matter what. If you are gloom and doom, there would be people that are like, but why not talk about how this guy did good or whatever? And it's like, you can't win.
Mhm.
And not that we're doing the podcast to get good comments. Like, that is not what we do this for, even though surely it is. And you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Hit that like button, subscribe.
Yeah, would be great. But you know what I mean? Like,
it's been a while since we got a review. Go
I
ahead,
know.
five
Yeah.
stars.
Where's the 5-star reviews?
Yeah, come on, guys.
Like, we're not that self-serving, but like, it's just a lot when you have to force yourself to, all right, we got 3 podcasts a week.
Here we go.
Let's get up and do this again. Saying the same thing every time. And then, it's brutal.
And that's the thing to think about is like, we think about how much time we were devoted to recording podcasts during the Clay Helton era, during last year. Like, that's 3 podcasts a week is 3 hours a week. More than that, because usually CarCasts go longer. But let's say 3 hours a week. Yeah. Prep for each of those podcasts is at least an hour, if not an hour and a half, 2 hours. Editing time after the fact, like the multi-hour process that is podcast is a labor of love.
Yeah.
And when you're not having fun, it's miserable.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to whine, because like in the chat, like Murdy is it was hard for all of us, and Angry Trojan, Josh and Buckeye Country, nobody was happy in the Hilton era. And that's what,
and you shouldn't have been like,
we're
not complaining that people were negative. Like, that it just it was what it was.
I got on the damn podcast and told people, like, if you stop watching, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't blame you for not watching games and not watching this podcast.
Yeah.
Because I can't like recommend it to anybody right now. And it's just really nice to be in a more positive space, and a more hopeful space, and a more excited space where, we don't have to look at each other and go like, in a podcast.
Yeah.
It's more like, let's go. Like, I'm all about it.
Yeah. I usually think that every time I look at you. I'm like, are we going to do this again?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to a voicemail we got from Cameron, Frisco, Texas. Cameron.
Hey, Rant and Troy, it's Cameron from Frisco, Texas. All I got to say after that USC LSU game is Michael was right. Michael was right. Michael was right. USC pulled up the W. Remember, Alicia chickened out and picked USC to win at the last second. That doesn't count, because that doesn't count for her season prediction. So at the end of the day, Michael was right. USC would come up and pull off the W against LSU. Who would have thought that? Went into it very pessimistic, just like pessimistic Alicia, out full force, thinking USC there was no way, no football reason that USC could come back or to have the win or to beat LSU. First of all, Kyra Hudson pulling off some Mike Williams magic in the wide receiver position. Miller Moss be Mawson, be Millering. It was Miller time, doing some Miller magic. Holy cow, what a performance by him. And then Woody Marks, oh my gosh. I love that running back. And oh my gosh, can I say, my mouth was drooling when they're throwing down the ball up the middle to Lake McCree. Holy cow. He makes me drool, just like what Lisa says, how much she loves those tight ends. Oh, I loved it. And the last thing that makes me drool, and it was like dying, was that defense. Oh no, Lincoln Riley might have figured out his solution to his coaching disabilities is that he couldn't figure out a defensive coordinator, couldn't figure out have a good defense, and he might have figured it out with Danson Lynn as the DC. Uh-oh. Our defenses can tackle. Oh, our defenses can cover. Oh, defenses can stop the run. Uh-oh. These other teams in the Big Ten are a little bit nervous now. We'd be licking our chops, ready in 2 weeks or 3 weeks to go face Michigan at the Big House. Here we go. And all I got to say is go Trojans, not go Tigers, but go Tigers, go Trojans. And beat the Aggies. Here we go. Let's go. The ultimate rave line, baby. And also, I got a question for you guys. Was this the best season opener game since the 2003 opener at Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium, where USC beat Auburn 23-0? Because that's what I think. So there's my questions. Hope you enjoy it. Cam from Frisco, Texas. Fight out, baby.
Thanks for the energetic, passionate call.
Now that's a rave line call.
That is. I feel bad because that call came in like 20 minutes before we started recording yesterday. There was like 12 seconds where I'm like, I gotta fit it in, right? And then I'm like, it takes forever to cut up stuff and all that stuff. We didn't have time, but
Sagar in the chat. This guy had 7 coffees. Yes.
Yeah. It needed to be part of the rave line for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we got to play it.
Before we answer your question, Cameron, I have to say, I fully expect you to call into the Rant Line in a few weeks, in a month or so. If USC loses to Nebraska, you need to do a Michael was right, but like the sad version of it. Because if you're gonna be all over the Michael was right for the LSU, then I'm just saying Michael predicted some not great results later on.
The CarCast after SC loses to Maryland and everyone's mad and fire this guy and fire that guy. SC gives up like 24 points and people are like, fire Danton Lynn. He doesn't know how to call a defense. When you're saying that, I need to hear, but Michael was right though.
Oh yeah, it was Maryland that you
Maryland and
Nebraska. Yeah. I'm
a psychopath. So. Yeah.
And then if USC beats Michigan, I expect people to call in saying Michael was wrong, Alicia was wrong, Michael was wrong, Alicia was wrong.
Yeah, so. I need to have it on the thing. I have this though.
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Yeah, that's Marcelo.
You do. I mean,
can I blame Alicia Dertola for this?
Yeah, we got those.
You do. I mean, he did give you a Michael was right, like perfect.
Well, it's from LA Fred, right? I think.
Yeah.
I have.
Do you have that?
I need to. Okay, you answer the question about the season opener. I have thoughts on that, but you talk about that. I'm going to see if we have Michael was right.
Okay.
In the archives.
Okay. Yes, I do think it's the best season opener since the Auburn win. In part because USC hasn't had a ton of great season openers since.
Oh, hold on.
Michael was right. Michael was right. Michael was right.
Oh yeah.
There it is.
There it is.
There you go. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Yes. USC hasn't had a ton of marquee season openers, and the one that they've had that I could think of recently was Alabama, and that obviously didn't go well. I think the Arkansas game a couple years later was pretty great, but in the Auburn game, in the sense that this compares to that, in the sense that I think no one knew that USC could be what they were in that game going in.
Yeah.
So the Auburn win was more effusive and more, going into Auburn and doing that. Like there were sort of circumstances that made that slightly different than this. But going in, USC being an underdog, a lot of SEC folks were saying USC was going to get trounced. Not just Paul Feinbaum, a lot of them. Freezing Cold Takes on Twitter was having a field day. So it definitely. Way up there. I think the Auburn call is a good one. Britton Irvine called in the Rant Line and mentioned it nearly made the Rave Line montage, but a little inside baseball. When we're editing the Rave Line montage, I try to find stuff that is similar to everything else, right? So there were 4 people that went woo. So it's easy to just put all the woos together, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes people say something that's not related to anything else. And it's like, I want to use it. Will it
stand on its own, or there's just no place to put it, maybe.
Also, the rant line's already like 5 minutes long. 8
Yeah,
minutes
and
long.
Britt Irvine mentioned the Auburn game, and I wanted to put it in, but it just ended up not making it in. And Cam brought up the same thing, and I think a lot of people think that way, that the Auburn game in 2003 is there. And I think that, yes, there are a lot of comparisons. I am also going to say the 2006 game against Arkansas. And that one, SC won 50-14, blowout of an Arkansas team that ended up being damn good. They won 10 games, went to the SEC championship game. They had.
I was going to ask because I don't remember what my perception of Arkansas was going into that game.
You know who started the game for Arkansas?
Who?
Robert Johnson, but he was replaced in the second half by Mitch Mustaine.
Oh yeah, Mitch Mustaine.
Yeah, Arkansas. You look at the stats. It's insane. Their leading pass catcher, Damian Williams. Ever heard of that guy?
Yes, maybe.
Okay.
Yes, maybe.
Their leading rushers, Felix Jones, Darren McFadden, Peyton Hillis.
Not bad.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
They shut down that rushing.
Yeah, SC, shut them down 130 yards rushing. I think there's comparisons there. I think that where you're right about the Auburn game is that it was unexpected to be so dominant. Auburn was the top 10 team in the country, and SC wasn't at the time. But then sort of solidified that they're the top 10 team, right? Arkansas was unranked when SC went to go beat them. And I think that where it's similar is that both of those games were the first games in which the offense had to replace
quarterback,
a Heisman winner. They replaced in 2003. It was Carson Palmer was gone, and Matt Leinart had to replace him. In 2006, Leinart and Bush were gone, and
John David
Booty came in, and we talked about it in the CarCast. There was the backfield of Emmanuel Moody, Chauncey Washington, C.J. Gable, Alan Bradford, Desmond Reed, all those guys. Ryan Powdrell, the fullback, got carries in that game. So, there were a lot of new faces, and that was a game that was close for a lot of it, but SC just blew the doors off in the second half. So, I think there's some comparisons, but I don't know if there's a true one-for-one. If SC ends up going on to make the playoff and make a long run in the playoffs or go and win the national championship, then I think it'll be easier to say Auburn. Until then, I think that you can point to any of these games and say that, Arkansas here, there's a handful of them, but there's not really a handful.
That's the problem is USC hasn't played season
Auburn
openers.
in 2002. Auburn 2002 SC won on Labor Day at the Coliseum against Cadillac Williams. Yeah, that's up there too. But yeah. All right. Let's get to a couple of YouTube comments we got after last episode, the LSU Fallout episode. Jay Jones says, "Can we agree that when you look at Oregon, they're still built like a Pac-12 team? They don't even look the same as USC. USC is built for the Big Ten." I have to say, I see why you could think that. I totally get it. If you only watched week one, I think that's a very easy opinion to have. SC was very physical in the trenches, out physicaled LSU, who's supposed to have the number one offensive line in the country, right? They were physical on both sides of the ball, especially on defense. And Oregon's issue was their offensive line against Idaho, and they struggled that way. But I think this is both recency bias and a extremely small sample size. Oregon, for the last 5, 7, 8 years, has been a very physical football team. Mario Cristobal molded that team to be very physical, and it's been taken over by Dan Lanning to be the same way too. Their offensive line has led them. They've had the best offensive lines on the West Coast for several years. I think Oregon deserves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt for one bad game because they have shown over the last several years that they're Big Ten ready, compared to SC had one game in which they showed that they're Big Ten ready.
Yeah, I also
think the idea of Big Ten ready is overblown.
Yes, that's definitely a factor here. I watched that Idaho game, and I don't know that I came away with the same perception of their size.
Yeah. Well, one of our good pals is an Oregon fan, and he had a hard time watching that game.
Well, it was a tough game to watch from an Oregon perspective. Yeah. But their defensive line
he talked about the O-line being the problem.
Is 300 pounders on that defensive line, comparable to USC size. Their offensive line it wasn't size that they were lacking. It was cohesion. It was maybe an injury issue with missing a critical player. They didn't look. They didn't look like they knew exactly what they were.
Yeah.
What their new identity was going to be with Dylan Gabriel and
it's week one.
If Oregon, here's what I'll say. If Oregon turns out to be a disappointment this season, I don't think it's because they aren't built for the Big Ten. I think it might be because there is perhaps, and this is me drawing a far conclusion that I'm not predicting. I'm saying if things go wrong for Oregon, my suspicion will be that it'll just be proven that the team building that Dan Lanning has been doing over the last couple of years, maybe it was Mario Cristobal's players that he was winning with, and
he still had a bunch of transfers.
I mean, yeah, he had a bunch of transfers, and that's you live and die by transfers. Sometimes they have a bunch of transfers again this year. The offensive line lost some really, really key players. Like there's been some brain drain, losing coordinators and coaches and all that kind of stuff. Like I think it would just be, it's more about that and less about whether or not they're Big Ten ready. They've been very good over the last 2 years, but teams, again, this is Nick Saban has poisoned all of our minds. Teams ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Most teams don't win 10 games a season every year for 10 years.
Yeah.
The ones that do, the coaches those are special coaches. Even the guys like Mark Richt and Mac Brown, who it sort of started to turn sour on them because they just couldn't do anything more than that. But like, that level of consistency is not necessarily normal. So Dan Lanning, as the Angry Trojan says, like Dan Lanning's a rookie. He's a young coach who might, I mean, look at Lincoln Riley last year.
Sure.
Another, I mean, not as young as Dan Lanning in terms of experience, but another coach who needed, who had some growing pains. And if that's what happens to Oregon this year, then I think you just call it growing pains and not like a bigger statement on Big Ten readiness.
It's one game. If they beat the doors off of Boise State this week, everyone forgets what happened in week one. The other thing is, SC fans would have guzzled some cod liver oil to go get Josh Connerly or Penei Sewell or all the big time offensive line talent that Oregon has had.
USC lost a lot of defensive line targets to Oregon too.
Yeah. Thibodeau, like all the guys over the years that SC would have liked to have that Oregon has gotten would have helped with Big Ten readiness.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just give it a week. Another YouTube comment we got from Illuminaire88, and this one has a couple of replies to it. Alicia, I know that you wanted to talk about this, so I added it to the rundown. Why is it so mind-blowing for you? USC should have been ranked higher than Michigan. SC scores better than Michigan. I hate hearing people who don't know what the F they are talking about. And no, Oregon wasn't hurt because other teams did well. They were hurt because, all caps, they almost lost to Idaho. LOL, I'm done listening, unsubscribed. There was a reply from Kyle Avenue. Relax, kid. Take it down a notch. Mike and Alicia are doing the Lord's work every week and making Trojan fan proud. That's a little hyperbolic, but okay.
Hey, I'll take it.
Illuminator88 responds, Lord's work, ? Making the Trojan family proud, LOL. Not anyone I know. From what I heard, they are clueless and obviously have never played football. Okay, I'm sorry, but I am not going to stand here and listen to someone say that I've never played football. I played one full season and one game of flag football in the rec league at Lomita Park as a child. And also I played in the Fleming Middle School Turkey Bowl in 8th grade as a starting right guard. So
I broke the glass ceiling of flag football at St. Elizabeth's Catholic School in elementary school, playing 2 seasons of flag football. And
you were the Sally Ride of flag football? I was
the Sally Ride of flag football.
Wow.
In the Valley Elementary Catholic School circuit, and was also a yearly participant in the annual Feckless Bowl, our Super Bowl Sunday flag football game with family and friends. So you know what? My credentials are impeccable.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you have the resume of like, I don't know, Monty Kiffin, rest in peace. Yeah, and maybe I broke my wrist in my first ever flag football game because there was targeting against the center because I was the center on a punt, and it was never called. I only played one game that season, but then came back the next year, and yeah, that limits my time.
You didn't play,
but I played, baby.
You didn't play with the club? I mean,
no. I tried out for the Broncos, but they just they didn't see what I had, unfortunately, and neither does Luminary 88.
So yeah, I'm not going to give this comment too much time, but I will say I think that I would urge listeners of this show to, as Tidal Avenue said, relax a little bit. It's okay if you disagree with stuff that we say. That's fine. We will disagree about things.
Yeah.
If you're gonna
I hope you disagree at some point.
Yeah.
If you're agreeing with everything that we said, that you're bound to be wrong.
Yeah. If you come into to our comments and talk about how we don't know anything, then I'm just not. I am more than I love debating people who disagree with me on these things on football stuff. Like I think it's actually very fun.
Yeah.
But I don't engage with debate with people who come in and say that you don't know what you're talking about because you're clueless or whatever. It's like that's not a good starting point for a debate. So my other just last thing on this, just like before leaving an angry comment, like take a deep breath, scroll back on the timeline, re-listen to what we said, and like see if you actually understand and comprehend what the conversation we were having was having, because that's not the conversation we were having, bro.
Also, I would say that when we're recording this live, there's going to be times where we just word things stupidly.
Yeah.
So
because like for instance, I certainly was not saying that Oregon only dropped because of other teams and not because they almost lost to Idaho. Like obviously, almost losing to Idaho was very much the reason they dropped. But it was a question of why did they drop that far?
Yeah. You know why? Because everyone loves when I say this. Polls are multi-dimensional.
Yes.
Yes. Tim in LA says, how dare he question your credentials? On the interview with Reggie Bush, there were 2 national championships and a Heisman Trophy and a Super Bowl. Don't forget the Super Bowl.
And a Rose Bowl Hall of Fame, by the way. Congratulations to Reggie.
Yeah, between you and Reggie, all of that was
between me and Reggie, yeah, we have a full trophy cabinet.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And exactly. All right. We got a bunch of questions here on YouTube that we got today. Let's run through these rapid fire. Soccer says, did we learn anything about Michigan last week? Yeah, they're not the same Michigan that they were when they won the national championship. They have a learning curve, especially on offense. And I think we're going to learn even more this week when they face Texas.
Yes. I would caution, because I've had to sort of think about this myself. All of last year, every game was basically what that Fresno State game was. And that's a team that went on to win the national title.
Yeah.
Michigan didn't ever really look super impressive. They were flirting with disaster week in and week out. So
Great song, by the way.
What we saw against Fresno State could be meaningful, but it's so hard to tell if that's just Michigan being Michigan, or if maybe Sharon Moore has an uphill battle with. Again, they lost almost their entire starting lineup. They're breaking in a new quarterback. They clearly, I think the biggest concern for Michigan, the reason why I continue to look at Michigan and think they are not a playoff team this year, for instance, is simply because I don't think they have an answer at quarterback. JJ McCarthy is somebody who got a first round drafted quarterback that has NFL ability, and right now they don't have that at quarterback. They have a 2 quarterback system. I don't know that they know for sure what they have going on there, and that's going to limit their offense quite a bit until they figure that out. Yeah. And they might not figure it out until they face USC, and it will suck if that's what happens and finally they take off. But that's also not a team that's not been their identity. They're not a blow you to smithereens kind of team. They're just everybody they faced, good and bad. They just sort of run the same routine.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens with Michigan against Texas. HR picking stuff. Did you notice Solomon Tuliaupupu get some playing time? Yeah, he was in there. He was in there against LSU.
He was in there for a drive, and I thought he did very well. Actually, he got some pressure. He helped with a. I think he helped.
He got one tackle
with a short stop on. I think it was on a run, but maybe it was on a screen or something like that. But either way, he did a good job in there. I think USC can be very encouraged by what the second line guys did in that LSU game, because like I said on the last episode, I think it wasn't particularly noticeable when USC made a line change, and that is super advantageous. Long may it continue.
Yeah, Solomon Tuliaupupu's tackle came in the first quarter on a 3rd and 3. It was a first down for 6 yards. He and
the
John
Humphrey. The fact that Solo was in there even in the first quarter,
that tells you that
speaks to the involvement that they intend to have with him for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Sagar says, is Bear Alexander a letdown?
It's way too early to say. At this point, I think I continue to believe that Eric Henderson is challenging him to be disciplined, and just me parsing the things that they say about him and the way that they talk about him, it very much comes down to what we saw from Gavin Meyer and Nate Clifton in that game was the height of discipline. These are veteran, experienced players who play within their job and their role, and they allow others around them to succeed as a result. Bear Alexander has not necessarily been that player, because Bear Alexander has been the guy, the most talented player on the field, who had to basically try to do it all himself. And so I think there's a philosophical change there for Bear that might be slightly difficult to sort of come around to. And if he comes around to it, I think that there's no way we could call him a letdown. And if he doesn't, then yeah, maybe you can call him a letdown. But also, if he is contributing to a successful defensive rotation, I also wouldn't call him a letdown, because it's about what that unit does, more about what any individual player on that unit does. And I want to say, I don't know if it was Lamont or somebody else. The comment's now quite a ways away. Is that defensive tackles, you can't always judge them by stats. Obviously you want Bear Alexander to be getting sacks and tackles for loss and all that kind of stuff, but he can be having an extremely good season without any stats to show for it. So that's something to also take into account about whether or not we're calling him a letdown. I don't think he was a letdown in that LSU game.
Yeah.
Because he was contributing to
everything else
that USC was doing.
All right.
And he's also another one that I think we will see, based on the push he was getting against the interior line for LSU at times in the pass rush against lesser guards. That bull rush of his is going to generate some stats.
Kenny says, if SC gives up 23 against Utah State, would you have concerns about the defense? I hate that I have to
Here you
do
go.
this. Here it goes.
Yep.
I do this all the time.
Yep.
What does that 23 look like?
Yep.
Is it was, you know, 56-9 going into the fourth quarter, and they gave up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter? I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a 31-23 win in which Miller Moss has to play all 60 minutes?
That's a problem.
And Bryson Barnes, scrambles for a couple of touchdowns or something? Yeah, I'm concerned. But there's a wide gap between those things. I think the difference is, and yes, I think you don't want them to score 23 points because I just think of like, I'm someone who, when I'm learning something, I try to imitate other people, right? Like, if you're learning to write, you read what other people are saying and like you try to look how they did it. If you're learning to dance, well, how are other people doing it? And I'll try to do it like them, right? You want to build a great team. You want to look at what other teams are doing. Those other teams in the top 10 are beating the teams, 52-0. Alabama laid the wood on Western Kentucky this past week. The score was what was it? 63-0. Yeah, like I'm not saying that that's where the standard is. Like if it's not 63-0, that's a problem. No, obviously not. But it would look it would be so comforting from the SC perspective if you look at it and we're like, okay, SC did to one of these teams that they're supposed to beat what all the top 10 teams are doing, because top 10 teams don't have that problem in just like laying to one of these teams, and we haven't seen SC do that in a long time. Look at last year, right? Like SC was winning games like 60-20 at the beginning of the season.
If ever there was a time to pitch a shutout, I think this would be a hell of a moment to do it.
Yeah.
And based on the defense that we saw against LSU, I don't think there is any reason why this couldn't be a shutout in the vein of what Alabama did to Western Kentucky. I've watched some of Utah State play. They have some nifty players, but those players aren't niftier than what USC faced against LSU.
Right.
They don't have an offensive line like LSU. They don't have a quarterback like LSU. I think it is within the realm of possibility for USC to pitch a shutout here. So in that sense, like, would it be disappointing if they gave up 23 points? Yeah, I think it might be, depending on the context. But at the same time, like, we have to also realize that this is still a team that is learning and growing together. And the psychology,
still early in the season.
For me, it's really big on like the sports psychology of, my big fear for this game is just the letdown look ahead.
Right.
They expended so much emotional energy in that win against LSU. This game, the outcome of this game has so much more to do with the coaching job of managing ego, managing motivation.
It's also on short rest.
It's on short rest, all of that kind of stuff. So I think if USC gives up 23 points, I think there's context in which that's perfectly acceptable and not a red flag at all. And like you said, there is context where it is a major concern.
Yeah.
But I also don't think USC is giving up 23 points.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think my 17 points is too high of a line, and it's remnant of the defense that I'm used to seeing. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I do believe that this defense, as we saw against LSU, is capable of a shutout.
Yeah, I look at the teams, like I said, from last week. Oklahoma held Temple to 3. Ohio State held Akron to 6. Texas shut out Colorado State. Alabama shut out Western Kentucky.
Ole Miss shut out Furman.
Yeah, Michigan held Fresno State to 10. I'm trying not to talk about the FCS games, but yeah, like and make a true 1-for-1 comparison with Utah State, but like that's what other teams are doing. Why can't SC do it too?
Yeah.
So
that should be the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Last thing before we go, let's go to Lamont. I finally got to do my rewatch, and I believe USC was clearly the better team against LSU. We were the more physical team, the better prepared team, and the most disciplined. They played better than I thought. Question. I
wanted to highlight that comment simply because that was what I came away with too.
Yeah.
And I think again, the idea that USC was more physical than the LSU, than the SEC team, that should have a lot of people around the country shaking in their boots.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And like we said,
because that's been the knock on Riley, that he doesn't play physical football.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that wasn't physical.
I maintain that as great as that last drive was and SC getting the touchdown to win it, it matters very little to me in the sense of like our biggest takeaway of that game was everything else.
Yeah.
Like we were going to get on the pod if SC loses by a field goal and say all the exact same stuff.
Yeah.
Because
of what it looked like. The
eye test. Yeah. SC won the game and did all those things, which is even better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. Lamont also says, I live in Georgia. The Braves are offering $1 standing section tickets. Should SC offer discounted tickets on game day or give tickets to kids in surrounding schools to pack out the Coliseum? They do. I believe they do give tickets to schools.
They offered. I know for a fact they offer tickets to local teams because not Annie Hansen. I saw a tweet from her that was inviting coaches to get in their applications to pick up their tickets. Should USC do more of that? Yes, because for the Utah State game, as much as Lincoln Riley said on Trojans Live, like, the Coliseum should be rocking after that win. Like, I'm pessimistic. Alicia is out in full force right here. There is no way that the Coliseum is sold out. There is zero chance. For Utah State on September 8th or whatever day it is, there is zero chance that the 7th.
Yeah.
There is zero chance that game is sold out. There is zero chance that the Coliseum is packed. If they gave away $1 tickets, would it be more packed? Maybe not. I honestly don't know. But like, I also come from a European soccer sort of fan culture that I'm immersed in, and the big thing I agree with everybody in that side of the world, particularly the Germans, is you vastly improve your fan engagement and your fan culture and your atmosphere and all of that kind of stuff if you just make it cheaper to go to the game.
Yeah.
Make it cheaper to go to the game. You will make money on concessions. You will make money on all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, if you make it cheaper to go to the game and you improve your fan engagement, you recoup that money elsewhere.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, American sports teams don't seem to buy into that philosophy.
Well, because it's so corporate, But
as Kenny also says, it's going to be 102 degrees. Like,
it's also at 8 p.m. though.
Yeah.
It's 8 p.m.
Yeah.
I do think that it would be great. I can understand. I haven't really thought about this economically, so it's just me spitballing. It would be cool if there was a system where, like, on game day, any ticket that wasn't purchased is $5.
Walk-up tickets.
Yeah, like walk-up tickets would be like maybe not $5, $10, $15, $20, right? Like
$20 would be a hell of a deal.
As a way to fill seats. Yes, I think that would be a good idea. Couple other thoughts here. Michigan was giving away free tickets for drinking a Coke like a decade ago, and they got lambasted for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think there's optics of how you want to do it. And the $1 thing, I think sounds great, but I think it's easier with standing room only at a baseball stadium.
Yeah, where there's 1 million games every year.
Well, no, yes, but there's places to stand and see the field because the concourses, you can see the action from the concourse.
Yeah, but USC
that does
has,
not exist at the Coliseum.
USC, no, they have that section by the peristyle where there's like that bar or something like that. Like you could do that. You could do a peristyle standing section. Well, I don't know with the band there, but either way.
I'm telling you right now, they do not want
No.
the people buying $1 tickets to be standing
there. Yes, for sure.
Yes. No, I don't see anything wrong with people buying $1 tickets. I think that the people who run the Coliseum and all that stuff, they want those to be like those standing room areas like that where there's bars and stuff to be, doing all that other stuff with the premium opportunities and stuff. So, but yeah, I know they do give it to kids, like you said. I think especially a game like this is great if you're a 7-year-old. I don't know, maybe older. You're playing Pee Wee. You're 12. Never been to a game before. You go to Manual Arts. You know that the Coliseum is there, but you've never been. And you get to go as a 12-year-old with your team to a game against Utah State, a game which SC's probably going to jiggle bag the Aggies, right? Like, that's a cool experience. And maybe that stays in your brain. And next year, you're going to ask for an SC jersey for Christmas. Or, you know what I mean? And 4 years later, you're going to want to go to Rising Stars camp or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, start somewhere. I think it's a good idea. All right. We will catch you guys late Saturday night after the game. Immediately, not going to the game. We're going to do it immediately after. So about 11 o'clock, 11:15, 11:30, whatever it is.
And we will have to be, I am running a 10K the next morning.
Because you're a crazy person.
So I hope to God we don't have a lot to talk about in this game.
You know damn well we're going an hour and a half.
Yeah.
All right. We will see you guys next time. Until then, see ya.
See ya.
See ya.